Get started for session 2. We have Katie Twomey and Tiffany Cole and Kate Morris. So Katie, whenever you're ready.
Thanks so much, Erin. I was just practicing trying to share my screen. I don't know if you guys can see this.
We can see it.
Oh, okay, sorry.
You're good.
Well, hi, it's nice to meet you guys. I literally cannot see my screen, so give me 1 second. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Sorry, it's not doing what I thought it would do. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Katie Twomey, and so finding joy in Reformation is kind of a joke on Martin Luther during the Reformation. And I happen to be a member at St. Luke Lutheran Church in outside of Atlanta. Well, it's in Atlanta on Northside Drive. And I recently joined it and found out that, lo and behold, they had many closets full of boxes of things that were from the past. And I was like, what are we talking about? And they were like, well, we got some photos, maybe some slides, some architectural drawings, just the usual. And I was like, well, what is the collecting policy? And it was kind of like a what? And so I was like, okay, y'all. So I do archiving for my day job, but I would love to volunteer just to kind of get a semblance of some order so that we can go forward and keep documenting this amazing congregation. So as you can see, this was the very first service of organization in 1964. I loved when I mainly deal in my day job, I deal with architectural drawings. So I loved when I actually found the original 1964 construction materials and their slides of them actually building and pouring the concrete. What's really interesting is this church is part of the ELCA Synod, which in 1960s, it's a very traditionally Germanic Midwestern religion that you typically find in like Wisconsin, Missouri, Ohio. And so the head of ELCA got together and was like, hey, y'all, got an idea. Let's see if we can make a Lutheran church work in the South, actually in the deep South. Let's try just outside what was considered the Atlanta suburbs at the time and is now the city of Atlanta. And so this church was always kind of an experiment. And I love that idea that this was, it was built as a trial phase. If it worked, great. If it didn't, that's fine. And so I love the idea that even though it was an experiment, very 1960s architecture, concrete, you got your angles, very modern. And so I love that they kind of just went ahead and went full speed on this. Some other architectural drawings. I inserted a picture of the church as it looks today. And so you can kind of compare it to the west elevation, which I love. And some of the other things that I found, and believe me, I have only scratched the surface of this collection. Right now, I've basically digitized most of the negatives for the 60s and the 70s. We still have a ton of Polaroids, a ton of photographs from the 80s and 90s that I haven't even made it to yet, really. I thought it was cool. I can kind of see the progression of the sanctuary through the decades, from the 60s when it had just first been built through the 70s. And you can see they're kind of trying to get more light into the sanctuary to what it is today, where they've actually broken through the wall. They have light, which personally I think is great. It's kind of creepy being in a dim, not a well-lit area. So kudos to them for that. And then also it's not only the progression of the building, but it's also the progression of the church and the community and the church itself. And so these are just some of the things I had found from newspaper clippings of the children in the 80s doing a hunger walk, to an altar painting being donated, to group activities, which I love this picture because the guy's jacket says "Born to Eat Lutefisk," which is such a Lutheran thing. It's not that great tasting, but everyone should try it once in their life. And it is also growing in space. And so there was an addition put on, and I was really cool. I was able to find slides of that addition happening. This explains some of the leak problems because like that roof is really flat. And so it was really cool just to see the progression. We still have the pastor in this picture. He is now just retired, but a member of our church. So I'm excited at the thought of being able to show him these pictures and to see what he remembers and thinks about. And I think that could be maybe a good oral history that could be put into their archive. And finally, to today, the church St. Luke is very inclusive. It's LGBTQ friendly. And in fact, they host Drag Me to Church events where they have drag queens from the city of Atlanta, famous in the city of Atlanta, come and perform and during a church service. And so this was just the most recent performance. And I just love the juxtaposition of the idea of this church community that began in the 1964 as an experiment to see if Lutheranism could take off in the South, and evolving all the way to today, to 2025, where it's a welcoming community that is open and inclusive. This was a really short presentation. I just wanted to share because I didn't realize that there was a church that was so open and inclusive, and I thought it would be fun to share with others. And really, my main goal is to just be able to create an archive that the members of the church can go to and be able to see the history in the past, and we can keep creating memories in the future. And that's it. I'm assuming questions are at the end, but happy to answer. I'll put my email in the chat if anyone has any questions. Happy to help.
Tiffany and Kate, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Sharing, everyone can see? Yes? Okay,
Yes, we can see.
thank you. All right, good morning. My name is Kate Morris, and I am head of special collections at James Madison University. I'm joined today by my colleague, archivist Tiffany Cole, to share about our work to provide archival expertise and labor in support of an ongoing community-driven project to preserve a historic Green Book house in Harrisonburg, Virginia.
Hey, Kate, can you, we're
Oh, you want
seeing
me to share
the
the slideshow?
preview. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Here we go. And there we are. Excellent. All right. So a bit of background. The Ida Mae Francis Tourist Home stands at 252 North Mason Street in Harrisonburg, Virginia. The house dates to the early 1900s and is located in Newtown, which is the historic African-American community in Harrisonburg's Northeast neighborhood. It was occupied by the same family until 2022, and the homeowners operated a boarding house and a tourist home on the premises until at least the mid-1960s. That the house stands is significant. So-called urban renewal projects of the 1960s resulted in the demolition of much of the Northeast neighborhood's Black-owned homes and businesses. The house at 252 North Mason is one of only a few homes that remain standing in the neighborhood from prior to the 60s. So connection to the Green Book. The Green Book, as you all probably know, was a travel guide created as a resource for African Americans traveling during the era of segregation and was published annually from 1936 to 1966. The directory provides a state-by-state listing of hotels, restaurants, service stations, and other places that were safe and welcoming for Black travelers. And pictured here is the 1962 edition of the Green Book, with the house identified here as the Mrs. Ida Francis Tourist Home under Harrisonburg. And while the Green Book is perhaps the most well-known of these travel guides, other similar directories existed. Here's a 1955 edition of Go Guide to Pleasant Motoring that lists the house as the Francis Tourist Home. And both of these directories and others are made available online by the New York Public Library. A bit of background on how we came to be involved. Work to preserve and recognize the house as historically significant began in 2022 when William Reed, lifelong resident of the Northeast neighborhood and close family friend of the former homeowners, inherited the house at 252 North Mason Street. Dina Reed, daughter of William Reed and herself a lifelong resident of Harrisonburg's Northeast neighborhood, is also the mayor of Harrisonburg, serving since 2017. Mayor Reed and her father recognized the historic significance of the house and immediately began efforts to organize a local Green Book House preservation team, of which Tiffany and I are involved. This team includes members of the local community as well as faculty and experts from James Madison University and Eastern Mennonite University, both located in Harrisonburg. I'll turn it over to Tiffany.
Thanks. So as Kate said, the house was bequeathed to William Reed, who was the kind of caretaker and in-home. He wasn't in-home, but he looked after the last resident, her name is Snooky Rouser, and she passed away in December 2022, and the house was bequeathed to him. She was Mrs. Rouser. Ms. Rouser was the last remaining member of the extended Francis family. She was Ida Mae Francis's granddaughter. So beginning in earnest in the spring of 2023, Mayor Reed and her father began convening stakeholders, as Kate mentioned, from various community groups, local universities, to kind of figure out what to do with this house. And we're looped in because the owners recognize the significance of the house, obviously, and related to our work, the presence of historic materials, personal papers. At the same time, they recognize they didn't have the expertise, resources, time to properly address the housing and the inventory and, informal cataloging of these materials. So that's where we were brought in, kind of in a consulting capacity. And, coming from the university, we were able to supply our expertise, time and resources, but also materials as well. And I should say, from the outset of this partnership that is over 2 years now, 2 years long, there was no expectation that we would take ownership of the personal papers or the family papers that were in this house. We made that very clear that we were there strictly to assist in any ways that they thought would be beneficial, but we did not want to pressure anyone, particularly in the beginning stages where people were still figuring out what to do with the house and what they wanted to do. I will say that conversation has evolved. The future stewardship of the materials and is evolving. So that still hasn't been decided. The materials are still in the house and not in the custody of JMU. Next slide. So the work that we have accomplished thus far, as I said, we provided our expertise, our time and resources, and then we also provided archival supplies from our own stash of supplies, including Hollinger boxes, archival folders, to house these materials. Thus far, we've made 8 visits to the house. Some of those were kind of stakeholder information sharing meetings, but the bulk of those were Kate and I in the house, literally digging through drawers, going through closets and identifying, bringing everything to the dining room of this house. And this picture here is one of the very first meetings because there's not a lot here yet, but going through cigar boxes, going through little things and trying to identify the doing appraisal, as we all are familiar with, and identifying the historically significant materials. Thus far, we've housed and inventoried 9 boxes of family papers. And I should say about this, the materials we identified are very rich in that they document the 3 generations of this family. The extended Francis family, they include photographs, minutes, because some of the family members were involved in a local ladies auxiliary, for example, church papers, financial legal documents, photograph albums, all of that. And it does a really great job at documenting the local African-American neighborhood, some photographic evidence of urban renewal happening, the vibrancy of this neighborhood, but all that is to say there, we have not identified any smoking gun that provides explicit evidence of this house being run as a Green Book house. And perhaps that's common. We're kind of still learning about how a lot of this works with Green Book houses, but no ledger or guest book. And again, maybe those things didn't typically exist in Green Book houses, but that is just all that is to say the papers we've identified do a really excellent job at documenting the family and the African-American neighborhood. And one last thing that we weren't directly involved in, but this house was nominated and has subsequently been listed on the Virginia Landmarks Register as well as the National Register of Historic Places, and that happened last year. Next slide. And this is just a quick collage of some of the things we identified, some doctors' receipts. Dr. Dickerson is a noted Black physician in Harrisonburg. So there's receipts from him and just photographs of the family and the neighborhood. And the house is remarkably well preserved and basically looks exactly like the bottom right photograph today without the like aluminum Christmas tree, but it looks very similar. Next slide.
Okay, so what's next? We estimate that our work to physically co-locate, rehouse, create an inventory for those materials will be complete within 1 or 2 additional visits to the house this summer. This work supports the homeowner's desire to seek an independent appraisal as they consider options for a future archival home for the family papers and documents. We will continue conversations and provide time, labor, and expertise as the project progresses. And importantly, we will continue to support the desired outcomes that our community partners wish to see for the disposition and use of these archival materials that represent their history and their stories. In practice, this means a willingness to work in creative ways to develop and implement archival practices that may fall outside of a traditional transfer of records from an individual to a repository. And as for the house, the preservation team is still in the dream big phase, but focuses now on efforts to update infrastructure within the house and to seek grant funding, additional support for the project.
So why we're here this morning, what brought us joy? One of the big things for us, JMU has a huge physical footprint, and kind of just like I don't know, a feeling of a footprint in the community. So strengthening the relationship between JMU and the local community, which has historically been tenuous, and we're all probably familiar if we come from college towns, this town-gown relationship can be kind of fraught. So making steps and progress with our work, but others as well in the university to kind of build relationships and building trust. Again, as I said, this is a 2-year plus relationship. This isn't just like go in, extract and leave. This is like an ongoing partnership. And something I think for Kate and I both, I'm a townie. I grew up in this area, and Kate has lived in this area for years and years. And despite thinking, at least for me, thinking that everything there is to know about your community and its history, this was one of the things that I was just surprised to learn. I have driven past this house probably hundreds of times, and I had no idea its history. And so that's really rewarding for me. Again, providing expertise outside of a traditional archival setting. We got out of the office. Our library is in the midst of a massive renovation. So we're not even in a library. We're in like weird satellite locations. So it is amazing to get out of these places and to get out in the community and do the work that matters, that has an impact, that, it's not a meeting, it's the work that we probably all got into this profession to do. So that's been, really gratifying and fulfilling. Next slide. And this just quickly going back to the town gown stuff. This is a 2 pages of a multi-page spread that our university magazine did, talking about the Ida Mae Francis tourist home, as well as in the larger context of urban renewal. So again, just efforts to kind of building trust and building that relationship with the university and the local community. And our last slide. So these are just some resources, if anyone's interested in learning more about this specific house, but you know, just larger conversations about community archives and that kind of thing. There's some really awesome resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate and Tiffany. That was so cool, so fascinating. Do we have any questions for our presenters? Things you want to talk about? Because they were both very interesting. Yes, Jennifer.
I just want to say thank you, Katie, for that really great presentation. Particularly the the explanation of the sort of the founding of those Ellicott churches, because I have been working on some architecture collections here and found a whole bunch of plans for Lutheran churches in Mississippi and Alabama in the 60s. And I was like, where did this even come
That's
from?
awesome.
Since when do we have Lutherans? And now I'm like, oh, it's because they randomly decided in the 60s to try and plant churches here. So that provides some great context. So thank you. That was really great.
That's really cool to hear, Jennifer. No, I'm so happy you spoke up that it was in Mississippi as well, because I thought it was the most, you know, I'm a background as Lutheran, but all my family's either from Germany or Wisconsin. So I love the fact that they also tried to get into the South and succeeded.
Yeah, it was more Alabama than Mississippi.
Okay.
It was, I think it might have been there's a bunch of different places in Alabama.
That's awesome. Well,
So,
I put my email in the chat. I would love to hear more, like what cities you found that in. Thank you.
okay. Actually, I have questions for Tiffany and Kate too, because I've also been working with an African American house museum here, and have you connected them to any sort of larger organizations that deal with house museums specifically?
I think we both kind of spoke about these other stakeholders that are involved, and we've kind of relied on their expertise. And some of those are associated with our university, who have more direct experience with the public history side of it. We kind of have strictly come at this from like, we can help you identify your archival materials. And that we're good at. The larger, like, what you need to do with this house is like beyond our scope. I will just speak for myself. And you know, the house, because it's a historic house, you know, it's early 20th century, but you know, the electricity is like wonky, and I think actually
Yeah.
currently undergoing an upgrade, which has its whole other set of issues as it relates to security and preservation. But yeah, I haven't been
The
directly
house down. Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean the problem with the house museum here, the big problem they have is that they don't have an air conditioner, which is very spendy to put in retroactively. But it's real hard to get people to come to your house, especially in Mississippi when there's no air. Because everyone is like, no.
That's funny that you say that, because this house didn't have any heat this winter, so the water's not turned on. So we had to we would have been, finished this by now, our portion of this work, I think, to inventory, but we couldn't go. It was too cold, So now we're back, and we again no AC, so we go early in the morning, and can't stay too long.
Yeah, the one that's here, they did their like grand opening last year on the 4th of July weekend when it was approximately 9 million degrees outside. And we're all kind of standing on the porch, slowly wilting as they are doing their opening blessing. And I'm like, I'm so glad that I could be here, but also I desperately would like to go sit in the car and blast some air in my face that is hot.
And I think for better or worse, I think we have been able to leverage the lack of proper heating and cooling to further the conversations about permanent stewardship of these materials. Like, as I said, I think they're making headway and updating the electric, but it's, this house is not, doesn't have proper humidity controls or temperature controls. And so the materials and there's so many photographs and they just can't, it's not a great place. So we've kind of used that as like, whether you want the materials to come to JMU or not is up to you, but permanently staying in this house as is not, we would not recommend that.
We don't mess around with the heat and humidity down here, as we all know. Because it is 1,000,000 degrees outside. And it is only 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock if you're in the central time zone. It is too hot. All right. Do we have any more questions or things we want to discuss right now? Or are we ready to have a break? I think we're ready to have a break. All right. So since we had a very short break last time, we will have a longer break this time. Definitely time to go get coffee, get a snack, go check in on everybody, and we'll be back here at 9:50 Central, 10:50 Eastern. All right. Thank you.